Three, two, one.
Yes.
The claim that we've come up with is that I believe that we should tax the rich more heavily.
Okay, before we were taxing the rich, I want to talk specifically about Mamdani's new policy.
Which one, the pied-à-terre?
Yeah, the pied-à-terre. Yes, so I'm guessing you're for that policy, right?
I would say generally yes.
Okay. Why do you think that's a good thing for New York?
I think the pied-à-terre tax is a good thing because when you look at okay, so pretty much when I say tax the rich, right, a big reason behind it is because a lot of the rich people that so-called live in New York spend like 49% of the time they need to here and the other 51 somewhere where they don't pay taxes.
Right.
So these pied-à-terres that are being taxed, they're over $5 million in value, right, which is very high already. So usually they're like third, fourth, fifth properties.
Sure.
And they're sitting empty almost the entirety of the year and taking up like real estate space that could be used by like anyone that actually needs it, right? The city's in a bit of a housing crisis that Mamdani is trying to fix. So I think that generally it's a good thing to be able to implement this tax, which drives these rich people out of the city when they're not really paying these taxes, right?
Okay.
As to the city,
okay.
Especially if they have other properties around it, and instead allows the like an opening and housing space for people who actually need it.
Okay. Okay, so a couple questions. If someone wants to invest money in New York City and not live in their house, why is that a problem? Like, why does the residency matter? If you pay rent, right? Let's say you pay rent in New York, you go somewhere else. Why should you get taxed because you don't live in New York? Doesn't make sense to me.
Can you explain your question a little more?
Yeah. I don't understand the residency requirement of the tax is what I'm trying to say. Like, why does someone get taxed if they don't live? That feels like the government trying to tell me why should I live in, let's say I'm a millionaire, which I'm not, but like, why should I live in my apartment just so I don't get taxed? Like, why does the taxation depend on whether or not you live in that property?
Well, I would say it's because it's like I don't know how to put this. It's edgy, right? It's not like they're spending like 100% of the year somewhere else and 0% of the like they're spending like just the bare minimum amount of time here possible to actually like skimp out of the taxes. So by implementing a tax on the properties, you're like recuperating the loss in taxes that happen from the person not spending the like appropriate amount of time here, and like it's almost like making up for what they evaded.
I don't think they're evading taxes. You have vacation rentals, right? For example, say you have a vacation rental in some place. If you don't want to stay there, you don't want to stay there, right? And then if you're talking about then why don't we just rewrite the tax code instead of making tax dependent on the occupancy requirement? That's one debate. The second point I have against this is that I think that brings.
Wait, can we?
Sure.
Can we talk about just
yes,
in
the occupancy requirement?
No.
Yeah.
In broader terms, I'm not very well versed in the pied-à-terre tax, right? But in broader, can we talk about taxing the rich like more broadly?
Yes, absolutely.
So, for example, do you believe that, like, I believe that we should tax the rich and like drive the funds that we get from that into like societal welfare programs?
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I mean, I don't know if I think we could tax the rich. I think we should tax the rich by maybe just changing the tax code entirely, because right now it's too easy for them to not pay taxes, right? I agree with that. I don't know if I want to put it in societal welfare because I don't know like where that goes. Yeah, I don't know, but like for example, I'm from California, right? We have the $1 billion train. I think the SF to LA train system.
Yeah.
They spend $1 billion. They've laid out like a little bit of track. So I'm not entirely sure the government is the right place, but I'm not entirely sure where else it would go, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah.
Well, I would say that when I say societal welfare, I don't necessarily mean like funding trains, although with the that could be a possibility. But like for example, on the point about welfare queens, right? Like I'm a big believer in the whole like teach a man how to fish instead of giving him a fish ideology.
Exactly, yes.
But the issue is that I think that's being misconstrued with what a welfare queen is. The truth is, welfare queens aren't people who rely off of societal welfare.
What is a welfare queen? I'm not familiar with the term.
It's like a term used by conservatives to designate someone who like leeches off of welfare programs instead of like going out to work themselves.
I see. I don't know if I mean, I agree with you on the teaching man how to fish. So that's why I don't like welfare programs specifically, but maybe like more scholarships or more like kind of pathways to open. Like maybe that goes into funding research or something like that instead of like, cause yeah, like I'm not sure you can be like, okay, someone doesn't live in a place, so let's tax them and then just give that money to somebody else. Right? I understand, okay, yes, you should read, like, the wealth disparity is a real problem.
Yeah.
So, in principle, I agree with fixing the wealth disparity. I don't think the argument is as simple as, the pied-à-terre tax, which I disagree with, or you can just put that money right into welfare.
But the difference is, like, for example, I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
we both agree that the whole teach a man how to fish instead of like giving him a fish ideology is good. But
Yes.
to be able to teach a man how to fish, you need to make sure that that man had breakfast that morning, right? You need to make sure that he like has the basic safety in his own life, in his work, in his house, in his education, to be able to feel comfortable going out, taking the risk to like learn new things, and having like the basic like health to be able to do so. When you fund societal welfare programs, take for example like Social Security for retirement, take for example like Medicare, Medicaid, or like
Sure.
you know, striving
Sure.
towards universal
Sure.
healthcare. You're setting up the basic necessities that any like society would benefit off of functioning or like function off of, right? It's not necessarily like scooping away or like into like putting funds into like a useless place. It's just the bare minimum of what you can do to have a society that's able to function and have less risks and just be more content in general with its like general state.
Okay.
When you have like, let me put it in perspective, for example, right?
Sure.
If you made the U.S. federal minimum wage in
Yeah.
40-hour work weeks, right?
Yeah.
It would take you 66,000 years to get $1 billion, right?
Yes.
For that would be longer than before the first observable human was found, right? The first trace of a human was found.
Sure.
So the amount of money that billionaires have is just so like indescribably large,
Yeah.
and it inherently relies off of the exploitation of the workers that like produce it.
Yeah.
So to strip away some of that, some of those funds and like tax it more heavily
Yeah.
in exchange for providing these basic like necessities and basic programs that would then benefit the working class in exchange, in my opinion, is the bare minimum.
Okay. So what's your definition of bare minimum? Because look, I grew up in India, and I think that the average person in the U.S., I think in general, from what I've seen, the poverty that I've seen growing up, I think in general their needs are met. I think the current amount of welfare, in my opinion, but I've never lived on welfare. I lived a comfortable life, granted. I think that's sufficient. Secondly, even more than military spending, I'm pretty sure Social Security spending is higher. So we're already a pretty big welfare state. So I don't see how more welfare will necessarily help us. I think you have to fix the wealth disparity. I agree with you.
What I would say is like, we do spend an awful lot on Social Security. I would say that like,
Yeah.
to elaborate on my point, that the current system of welfare is poor and we need to rework it, right?
Right.
But we still need to invest like more money into it, like slightly more. But like we currently spend a lot of money in welfare. But I think that instead of having Medicare, Medicaid, all these like programs, we should abolish private health companies, private health insurance like United Healthcare, stuff like that, and instead have a universal healthcare system that's free of charge to the consumer, funded by our taxpayer dollars, right? And if you actually look at it, if we augmented tax by 4% on the 900 billionaires that exist in the United States today,
Yeah.
it would provide $4 trillion in general gross revenue from that taxpayer dollars, which is just enough to fund annually universal healthcare, right? Bernie Sanders proposed a plan very similar to that, except his
Right.
plan was, you know, instead of just funding universal healthcare, we fund a bunch of this, bunch of that, send checks to families.
Yeah.
I actually disagree with that. I think we should work on fixing what's broken.
Right.
And by fixing universal healthcare, like from the get-go, we would be able to like redistribute the way that we like distribute those tax money in like
Right.
in societal welfare,
Right.
make it like clear, concrete systems that work for everyone, making everyone's life easier, everyone to understand better where their taxpayer dollars go,
Right,
and
right.
just it's like cleaner money.
I think we directionally agree on most things.
Yeah.
I think we're arguing about the implementation details.
I agree. But I think that's an argument that won't go anywhere. You know?
Exactly.
But I think it's good. Yeah.
All right, man.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I'm talking about it's